Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining the June 2017 Bing Ads API Best Practices webcast. Today we are excited to share with you some tips on how to make the most out of the Bing Ads API. The Bing Ads API empowers you to create an application on top of the Bing Ads platform to manage large or complex client accounts or integrate them with your own in-house tools and applications. The goal of today's webcast is to provide you with some insights and shortcuts in how to be more efficient with those calls. Before we begin, I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to our presenters. My name is Tiffany Sanders, and I will be your host. I'm an operations PM working on the API Partner Business team. Sebastian Iyer and Eric Urban are PMs for our Bing Ads API product, which includes the ad insights, bulk, campaign management, customer management, and billing and reporting services. So with that, let's jump into our agenda. Sebastian will start with the basics of OAuth and provide a quick level set. Then we will move into more of the advanced content, reviewing the bulk API, what it is, and why you would want to use it. Eric will then do a demo and share examples of how the Bing Ads SDKs can be utilized to save you time. Please note that as technology grows, information shared in the demo today is subject to change. And so with that, I will now turn it over to Sebastian, where he will kick things off.
Thanks, Tiffany. So before we get to the presentation, I wanted to mention that in order to get the most out of this talk, please make sure that the following is true for you. So you're a new or existing user of the Bing Ads API. You are somewhat familiar with the services and features of the Bing Ads API, or you've started using the Bing Ads API. If your answer is no to any of the above, please review the Getting Started Guide in MSDN. Next slide, please. So moving on to the first topic of the presentation, which is OAuth. So what is OAuth? OAuth is the industry standard for authenticating access to websites without needing to store a username and password. The way the access is provided is by means of an authorization token. In order to obtain this authorization token, a one-time manual authentication is required. So Bing Ads API makes use of OAuth in order to obtain permissions to access a customer account. In the case of accessing Bing Ads API using OAuth, you would enter customer credentials, the username and password, as a one-time step. And then you'd obtain the access token, which is used in subsequent calls to the Bing Ads API. One thing you want to keep in mind is using the authorization token is mandatory every time you make a call to the Bing Ads API. Next slide, please. Thanks. So what are the steps involved in accessing Bing Ads API using OAuth? The first thing you need to keep in mind is you want to register your application. This is a one-time step. Once you finish the registration, make note of the application ID, client secret, and redirect URI, as these will be needed in subsequent steps. The next thing you want to do is determine which authentication option to choose. There are two options available. The first one is implicit grant flow. This is useful for applications which don't require long-term access to the Bing Ads API. The second option is authorization code grant flow. This is more useful in cases where you need indefinite access to the Bing Ads API. So regardless of which option you choose for authentication, use the token that you received in the request header of each call to send that to Bing Ads API. One thing to keep in mind is with authorization code grant flow is that you'll need to refresh your access token within the expiry interval. So you also want to make sure that you store the current token as will be needed for retrieving the refresh token. And the last point is that if you use the SDK, the Bing Ads SDK, it is much easier to manage authentication as we have built-in methods to simplify the token request and refresh logic. So next up, Eric will be showing us an example of how to use the SDK to authenticate access to Bing Ads API.
Thanks, Sebastian. Hey everyone. So Microsoft Account Authentication is a workflow that all Bing Ads developers need to integrate at some point, as Sebastian was just mentioning. So let's say, for example, that you already have a Bing Ads account, and you can log into the Bing Ads web application. So now you want to enable the same user to use your application. So where do we set the credentials when we call the API? In each service request, you'll set the authentication token header. We'll get to the details of this token in just a minute. It's worth mentioning at this point that you should not set the username and password, as those are deprecated fields that do not support Microsoft Account Authentication. So now that we know where to set the credentials for OAuth, let's just walk through the process of obtaining permissions from the Bing Ads user. So first, you need to register your application. Alright, so let's assume that we have finished registering a native application that can run on the desktop, and we've set aside the registered application ID, also known as the client ID. So in just a minute, we're going to look at where and how to use the client ID. Before we look at a code example that uses the .NET SDK, though, I want to quickly call out the authentication with OAuth guide. So at some point, you'll want to review this guide. Whether or not you're using one of the Bing Ads SDKs, you should start here for details about application registration and best practices for managing access and refresh tokens. The guide is actually platform independent, so regardless of what language you're using, you can start here. And then the Getting Started guides for .NET, Java, Python, and PHP have some details about how to use OAuth with each SDK, very specific things to those languages. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at a code sample. So I've already added the client ID to my app config, and we'll kind of abstract away the details of that here. And so let's use it for a new, what we call, OAuth desktop mobile auth-code grant. This is an object that the instance of this object will let you kind of abstract away the low-level details, such as formatting the request parameters and parsing the response. But let's skip ahead just for a minute to take a high-level overview of where we're going. So we're going to check down here to see if a refresh token already exists. And by the way, this assumes that we're only caring about one user right now. So if you actually have multiple users of your application, then of course you need to securely store and keep track of each refresh token. But if we already have a refresh token for this user, we'll go ahead and request a new set of tokens. As you'll read in the guide that I mentioned earlier, we need to get a new access token about once per hour. Again, the access token is what you're sending in each service request in the header. Now, if there isn't any refresh token for the user, then we must prompt for their consent. And one of the most frequent questions we hear is, how can I have a headless or a console application which doesn't have to prompt any user for permission? But to be clear, it isn't an option. You'll need to establish trust via the user consent workflow at least once. And then going forward, you can use the refresh tokens to get new access tokens. So basically, when you launch your application, a browser control will describe the name of your application and the requested permissions. And then assuming the user clicks yes, we can then store the resulting tokens. That's shown in this example here in step 3. But let's step back up just a bit. It's worth noting that before making any request, you actually have some setup options. So, and the one that you don't want to overlook is how to keep track of the most recent refresh token. With the SDK, you can subscribe to this new OAuth tokens received event handler. And this is important because the SDK automatically requests new access and refresh tokens whenever the last access token expires. So to make sure that you always have the latest refresh token, you should subscribe to this event handler. And again, I've just covered the high-level flow here. So if you have any questions, check out the Getting Started guides for .NET, Java, Python, and PHP. There's a lot of details about each of the helper classes. And with that, I'll kick it back over to Sebastian.
Thanks, Eric. So the next topic we'll be going over is the bulk API. So next slide, please. What is the bulk API? It is a service for efficiently managing, making high-volume changes to campaigns, ad groups, ads, and keywords in your account. It is one of the 2 services in the Bing Ads API which lets you manage your campaigns. The bulk API is actually based on an asynchronous execution model. And there are 2 major functionalities available in the bulk API. The first one is you can download all the entities in your Bing Ads account as a file. And then the second key functionality is that you can make changes to this file and then commit them to your account by uploading this file. Next slide, please. So what are the reasons that you want to use the bulk API? The first thing is that it has a low impact in your application because it executes asynchronously. This means that You package your changes, all your changes, and then send it to the service, and then you can continue executing other logic in your application. The other thing is the changes are all grouped together or batched together so that it's more efficient to push them out instead of making individual calls. Some of the examples of using bulk API include uploading campaigns, ad groups, ads, and keywords all at once, updating keyword bits across multiple ad groups, and downloading performance data for all campaigns in your account. Next slide, please. So some of the best practices that we recommend when you use the bulk API are make use of Delta downloads whenever possible. So Delta downloads are actually a way for you to download only download the changes that occurred in your account since a specific time. This is actually efficient because you're only focusing on the changes to the entities that you're interested in, as opposed to getting everything in your account. The next thing is when you're uploading, make sure to only send the necessary record and field values. This also improves the performance of execution as you're only uploading the changes that matter to your session. And one of the great benefits of using the Bing Ads SDKs is that you don't really have to deal with reading and writing to the bulk download file directly. We actually abstract the complexity of that by exposing the data in your bulk file as in-memory objects, which you can then manipulate directly. So up next, Eric will actually show us how to use the SDK to easily work with the bulk API.
Hey, thanks, Sebastian. Yeah, let's get right into it. As Sebastian mentioned, you should consider using the bulk API. For example, you need to make some high-volume updates across multiple ad groups. So I'm going to just jump right into an example. So here's a bulk API download of all the ad groups in my account. And so in all bulk downloads, you'll see the column headers in the top row. Type, status, ID, parent ID, for example. Now, the bulk API supports comma or tab separated fields. In this case, it's a CSV file that I've just opened up in Microsoft Excel. For the example here, I'm interested in finding all of the expired ad groups and then reactivating them for about a month, just as an example. So let's not worry about how to parse this file for now, as we'll discuss some implementation details in a little while. Other than to say that, as Sebastian mentioned, the Bing Ads SDKs abstract away a lot of those details so that you don't need to worry about writing the readers and writers and all the parsing logic. So to activate the ad groups using the bulk API, I would need to upload new ad group records with a new end date and active status. So let's look at the example upload file. So I've basically just written out the type is ad group, status active, the ID and parent ID that I got from the download, and setting a new end date. And this is all I need to upload, and it's actually best practice to, as Sebastian mentioned, just to upload what is required. And now let's look at the upload result file. So if all goes well, you can see that I have now a new start date and end date with the status active for these ad groups. So now that we've kind of looked at the example and the schema, I just want to talk about implementation specifically with the SDKs. And of course, when it comes down to it, we'll need at minimum some kind of a reader and a writer. But again, the SDKs already ship with that those classes for you, so you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on the high-level business requirements. So let's look at the code. So one thing you'll also see is that the SDK ships with what's called a bulk service manager. And so this takes care of the upload and download requests, the polling, and retries for some of the common errors that otherwise you'd have to catch yourself. Now, let's just go ahead and look at the code. What this is doing is basically setting up, for the download, setting up which entities do I want to download. So, for example, I'm doing ad groups here, but I could actually look and get all kinds of other ones like ad extensions. I have, let's see, ad group negative keywords, right? Campaigns, ads. So every entity that you'll see in the bulk schema, you can specify here of which ones you want to download. And then you actually pass these into what's called download parameters. There's a lot of other options that we won't go into details, such as where do you want to download to, the file name, but these are your options for setting up the download. And then really it's a matter of saying, okay, bulk service manager dot download file, and that's really all the code that you would have to write. It's going to download it to the location that you requested locally. So now that I've got that, and that's what I showed just a minute ago with my download file. So I need to go loop through all the add groups in there and find the expired ones and then update the status to active with a new end date. So to do that here, we have a bulk file reader that I've passed and sent where's the location where the download is. I'm going to read them as what's known. We have bulk classes. Every row in the download file. So for example here, the add group type. Every one of these rows is mapped to a bulk entity. So a add group is mapped to a bulk add group. And so you're really not having to work with the file itself, but rather these objects. Now I've read all my bulk add groups, and I'm going to set up a writer so that as I'm iterating through them, I'll go ahead and make the writes to my upload file. And I find out if it's expired. I'm going to write a new bulk add group using the campaign ID that I had already from the download, setting a new date, new status, and that's pretty much it. You're getting to work with the objects that are provided within the SDK. And one thing I do want to point out while we're here is that when I'm writing a bulk add group, it contains an add group. This add group is really the same contract that you would find in the campaign management service. So the campaign management add group has properties such as ID, end date, status, and so you really can use the same definition that you would use if you're calling add groups or update add groups in the campaign management API, and you're going to work with the same objects here and write basically it's encapsulated or captured with a bulk add group inside of it. And now we're done with the reading and writing. Let's dispose and go ahead and prep the upload parameters. Again, a lot of options you can look into more after this session, such as where is the file that I'm uploading, do I want to compress, etc., and do I want errors and results back from this upload, or do I just want errors? So there's a lot of options here you can look at. Now that's all set up, so I'm going to say bulk service manager.upload file. And again, just that one line of code is going to handle all of the upload, the polling for results, and it will download the upload results file. So I will then go ahead and read back the result file, again as bulk add groups, and I can output them or sync them locally if I'm storing any data that I've just uploaded. I can sync it locally, but that's really it. I do want to mention quickly that we also have the option of working in memory, so you don't have to write and read from a file that you're managing locally. There will be some file written in a temp directory if you're using this other approach, but we have something called upload entities or download entities, and it's the same process where you're specifying which entities you want to download, such as add groups, but you're iterating through them in memory instead of reading and writing from a file. Okay, so that's and this sample is on GitHub, so you can check out all the details online after. And with that, I'm going to head back into the Q&A now and hand it back over to Tiffany.
All right, thank you so much, Eric. So now that we've shared how to get started with OAuth and best practices using the Bing Ads Bulk API and SDKs, we'll go ahead and take a look and see if we have any questions that have come in throughout the webcast. So I do see one question here. They're asking, the sandbox currently uses username and password instead of OAuth. Any chance this can be updated to match production?
So, Tiffany, thanks for bringing up the question. I can answer that. This is Sebastian, by the way. Yeah, so we don't have any plans right now to switch over to using MSA, although that's our intention. So we'll be sharing any updates in that regard through our different channels, so the API blog, through our monthly readouts and such. So definitely please do stay in touch, and we'll let you know once there's any update to that.
All right, thanks, Sebastian. And then one more question. Do you expect the report format to change?
I can take this one. This is Eric. So as far as the reporting service, if that's the question, there's no plans to make any changes there. So with the reporting service, which we didn't cover fully today, is you basically have the same idea where you can submit the type of report that you want to request, and you pull for the result and download the file. And in V11, we actually changed it a little bit so that all of the columns that you'll see in the file match exactly the API definition from the request. So I'll just throw that out there. That's a customer feedback that we had, and we implemented that in V11. Now, and just in case the question was about the bulk file format, we do version that pretty much with the major API version. So for example, with API V11, we have bulk file format version 5. So and with bulk API version 10, we did have, and we still support, format version 4. So you'll see we'll increment it with every major version. We have the flexibility as needed to iterate within a major version. So we could see file format version 6 within the API V11, although we're not expecting that. We hope to just be able to wait until, for example, V12 in the future, right, and then have a format version 6. So you can kind of see our cadence there. Other than that, there's no planned changes that we have. So thanks for the question.
Great. Thank you, Eric. So with that, I would like to end the call today by pointing out a few resources where you can find answers to any additional questions you may have based on the webcast today. You can find information on authentication with OAuth, bulk upload best practices, and Bing Ads SDKs on MSDN. You also find the community forum on MSDN where you can ask fellow developers or ask Eric himself their thoughts and best practices. If you go to the Bing Ads Dev Center site at developers.bingads.microsoft.com, you will find announcements on new features and our sandbox environment. If you're looking for more information, please be sure to sign up for our monthly API readout where you will find API alerts, new features and updates, current pilot and betas, and highlights from our blog. And you can sign up by adding your email to the Stay Connected portion of that website. So thank you again to everyone for joining our June API Best Practices webcast. The next quarterly call will be held in September, where we look forward to sharing the next round of updates with you at that time. With that, we will conclude the call. Thank you.